limits for certain vulnerable groups at times, but there may be also, it might be necessary for vulnerable groups like infants to set maximum residual limits. So you also have to, if you are into infant food, you also have to check the legislation specific on infant food, because sometimes it contains very particular levels. And somebody asked this question already this morning. There is, in this secondary legislation, a specific rule that there may be stricter levels for member states to be set. We have certain member states that have their particular problems which are coming from environmental contamination in certain regions. So they can set up rules that certain foods can still be used if certain extra conditions are considered. All of this, however, if a member state does that, it has to go through this notification procedure. That means that a member state, if they want to do that, they have to send their proposal to the Commission, and we decide whether it's in contradiction with union law, yes or no. There's a specific directive on this, 9834, which prescribes precisely the procedure on how this is done, and this is managed by DG Enterprise. Provisions on use, mixing and detoxification. So of course there's always a temptation, if you have something contaminated, that you put something in and then it's all good again. We don't allow that in all cases. Like here in Thailand, if you get a very spicy soup, you buy yourself a can of coconut and you put it in and then you can eat it again. That's not all the time. With contaminants that doesn't work all the time, so some treatments are not allowed. Chemical detoxification, we don't allow that. It is generally, I would say, considered that if you're trying to make something better by making it worse in the end, because you put a chemical in, you don't know what this chemical is doing, and it's better to, at least that is our approach in Europe, it's better to start correctly in the beginning, try to avoid the contamination and not fix it afterwards. Which normally creates only more problems. There are other people in the world who have a different approach on that. Specific provisions we have on ground nuts, oil seeds, tree nuts, dried fruit, rice, maize, and lettuce, for instance, on the contamination, which have to be looked at in detail by those people who are dealing with these kind of products. We have also monitoring and reporting duties. So this is very important for these contaminants, because as they're coming from the outside and they are not intentionally, you cannot ask somebody who asked for the authorization to inform you. So it has to come from monitoring exercises. Nobody has the product on the market, so you have to find out yourself what is going on in the environment on this. So we ask the member states to take certain samples yearly on certain products. Nitrate is always one that is in vegetables that's always debated, because in the south and in the north of Europe you need different kind of nitrate, or you get different kind of nitrate levels also in the relation to the fertilizers. Because of the environmental conditions, you need different fertilizers, different amounts, and you end up with different, as reasonably possible, results. So that's always something to watch for. Then, of course, we have all these toxins which are coming from the fungi that are like ochratoxin, which also go, or very often via the feed that is given to the animals, and then ends up. So you say, oh, my cow doesn't care what she's eating, I put something moldy in there, but no, it's it's getting found out afterwards. And we have, and those go, depending on the substance, either to EFSA or the Commission to look at it. And we have also acrylamide and furan are also currently the substances that are specifically monitored. Of course, why only this substance? You have to set priorities, because all of this analysis is very expensive. Some of these substances, a single sample costs 800 euros, so you just don't do it just for fun. So you have to see what makes the most sense, and that why we change often also these substances over the years according to whether they are a problem, yes or no. Of course, by setting the substance, I don't go into details now because it's basically the same as in the additives. The process that Claudia presented is basically the same whatever substance you're looking at. You have this panel, you have the initiative coming from different levels. I must say we seldomly get something from the parliament. They want this opportunity. It's giving them a better sleep, obviously, to have this possibility, but it's rather not happening. It's most of the times it's coming either from the commission or it's an EFSA initiative because they see in the monitoring that there is a problem and you should be looking at this more precisely. So, there is, of course, the principles of this. I guess Claudia will explain that anyhow a bit more in detail afterwards. There is a scientific risk assessment where definitely one of the most important things to consider is exposure. So you cannot keep it, you have to keep it reasonably down, and you have to balance that with the exposure, and then maybe take, as I said, the decision that this product cannot be on the market anymore. So or the production has to be completely changed. The environment has to be cleaned up, and things like that have to be decided and developed before you continue or you start again using that product. And of course, there's also a big concern in Europe on vulnerable groups of the population, small children, some people who are immune depressive or things like that, where a specific product is very important for a certain group. For instance, if you have people who have diabetes, they would eat a lot of rather fructose sugar than normal sugar, then you would be, if there would be a contaminant in fructose sugar for some reason or the other, that would be a specific problem, because then you hit one group of the society much harder than it would normally have to accept. And you have to balance these kind of things according to each other. We have also a problem, obviously, as nobody's producing this, we have to also look at available data. And that is often a problem, that we have to set certain limits without really a decent scientific evaluation, because there is a contamination, you don't have enough data, and then you have to, according to the precautionary principle, to set a data temporarily in order to at least limit the problem, sometimes only according to what the structure, the chemical structure of the product looks like. Does it have a benzol ring? Is it very long? Is it very short? Does it have characteristics of other toxicological products? Then you give it a hard safety factor, and you try with that. And that might kick certain products out of the market. And if they are coming from other countries, that really poses a problem. Then we have to find the arguments, negotiate, also find out why is it in there, and so on. So we have basically maximum levels for these products outside of the infant groups. And as I said, we sometimes have these kind of problems with third countries. We had one problem with on sunflower oil. This is only to illustrate how we deal with that sort of problem. There was a rapid alert. We have already heard about the rapid alert system, which is established to the food law. So everybody said, what's going on here? There is something unknown in this sunflower seeds. So the EFSA will issue a scientific statement. This is not an opinion, this is a statement, which is exactly what I said. They will look at the chemical structure and what you know generally about, but you cannot really call that an opinion, because it's not going through a structured process. It's just saying, oh, this is potentially a problem because it looks like this. So then we have to pull in the member states because they're doing the control. It's always a challenge to harmonize the control at this point in time, because then everybody will run around and getting nervous about what to do with this product, and one will hold it, the other will let it through, the other one will not even look at it, and the picture that we easily give to the outside is then a bunch of either hysteric or lenient people. So we have to pull our member states quickly together to find a position on how to deal with that product, at least temporarily. And then, in this case, no export of sunflower oil from a certain region was decided. Then you have, again, a meeting of the standing committee, which is the committee of the member states, which looks, pulls the experts together and people who have knowledge on the substance and also political deciders. Then, in this case, we send out the Food and Veterinary Office to look what's going wrong in this country. Why is this appearing? So an analysis was made. It was discussed with that third country, and a solution was found by helping them to define the problem, to do the respective analysis, change their production process, and develop a certification system which would only allow those products in which would fulfill the requirements. You all remember the problem with your neighbor in the north, that we got also involved in this. How did we deal with that? So we learned also that about this problem available. It's everywhere in the newspaper. The commissioner gets asked questions, do we have the same problem? Do we import and things like that? So we have to somehow deal with that. So again, we will also find out what is wrong there, discuss that with the country that the problem is initiated or is appearing in. Of course, as it was related to young children, that created also a big wave of discussion and press. Again, EFSA was also asked for a statement. This was absolutely something new. Of course, it was a fraudulent exercise, but you could sort of, from the knowledge that was available on the substance, identify that it's really a problem, and also from the problems that had already occurred in the country of origin. Then we take interim measures, because you have to convince your constituencies, your citizens, that you are not exposing them to the same problem. Also, the rapid alert system was alerted in this respect to look more specifically for that substance in all of kinds of origins, because often it is, if somebody is fraudulent, there's always copycats around the world who try to cheat with the same principle. So you have to watch out that it's also not developing someplace else. And then we started technical exercise, develop method of analysis to find that quicker, and also work with the third country to solve the problem. And we all remember the problem now, but it's not today anymore. So these are sometimes the waves that we have to deal with, especially in relation to contaminants. Okay. It's a bit long.
Thank you, Dr. Gudrun. So next, could I have Dr. Claudia joining us here, please? So next presentation will be by Dr. Claudia on risk assessment of food contaminants. Dr. Claudia, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now let's go to the risk assessment of food contaminants. As just Gudrun, she just explained, we have a different way to address this issue, but we have in EFSA a panel especially created to deal with all of these contaminants in food and feed. So in a practical term, the content panel is going to make an assessment and produce opinions on those undesirable substances natural toxicants, mycotoxins, or residues or non-authorized products that are not going to be dealt with any other panel. So it's a purely pragmatic, but in this way, we know which panel will deal with what. Contaminants, the contam panel has issued many different opinions, especially in the area of feed. We have 42%, and the 42 opinions, sorry, and 61 in the area of food. And then there are some mix. In the table, you have the differentiation between the different types of contaminants, on which we have been dealing with. For example, in the food, we have mycotoxins, we have metals. Again, in feed, we have metals, we have POPs, the persistent organic pollutants, and then we have mixed with these substances too. So we go back to our risk assessment principle, so hazard identification. In this case, contrary to what is going on in the regulated area, we have to make an opinion with the data available. Whatever data we have to reach a conclusion. We don't have, in some cases, the opportunity to go back to an applicant and to ask for more data. We can, of course, revise the opinion later, but we have to take a decision with the data available. We have the hazard characterization, and in this case, we have the exposure assessment. Again, we have some other tools that we have created in EFSA for this purpose. At the end, we will have the characterization. We will see it in a while. So we characterize the hazard. Again, we have the data, toxicokinetic data. We have data in laboratory animals. So we have mutagenicity, carcinogenicity, reprotox. We have to consider all data available. Sometimes we have data on the neurotoxicity or the immunotox. We will take this into account in our conclusion. We are dealing here with contaminants in food and feed. So we also consider information on adverse effects in animals as part of all of this contaminant evaluation. And here we have, in some cases, some human data as part of surveillance programs or monitoring program in humans. So it's not that we are asking someone, an applicant, to do a human data trial. It's because we have this data available. In this case, we are not extrapolating from an animal to a human, but we are extrapolating directly for humans. So this data is extremely important, and we use it in the contaminant area. We have in the hazard characterization, we will identify the critical effect, which is the relevant adverse effect seen at the lowest dose level. So we have different studies, and we will identify this critical effect at the lowest dose level. And this critical effect, we call it no AL or no L, no observed adverse effect level or no observed effect level. So this is the critical effect that we will need to identify in the data set that we have. As we said, sometimes we have extensive data sets. Sometimes we have few documents, few papers. We have to find an answer, or give an answer, give an output with the information that we have. If we have chronic data, we can set what we call a tolerable daily intake. So this is based on a chronic data, so it's the amount expressed on a body weight basis that can be ingested daily over a lifetime period without an appreciable risk. We have the same also for the acute exposure. In this case, we have only an observation of a period of 24 hours. So either we can use a chronic or we can use an acute dose, an acute reference dose. I hear something strange. Can I continue? Okay. I don't know what's going on exactly. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So, well, we have a chronic or an acute data. Then, in some cases, we really have very few data. For those cases when we have really, really few data, EFSA has been also working in the last years and produced also guidance document on an approach that we call a benchmark dose. So this is a purely mathematical model to identify a dose-response curve. In this case of the benchmark dose, we use it for genotox and carcino compounds. So those compounds where we say that there is no threshold. So this is a little bit changing, but we consider the genotox carcinogenic compounds as non-thresholded substances. So it means that any exposure should be avoided. We use the benchmark dose to modulate, because in some cases, to make a modeling of the situation. Because in some cases, we have only 1 or 2 points, those response points. So we need this mathematical model. The mathematical model will give us a curve also, and will provide us with we will identify at the end like a NOAA, but based on this mathematical model. This is the part on the tox data, on the evaluation or an identification of a critical effect. On the other side, we have the exposure data. So again, EFSA has tried to collect as much data as possible. Here we have occurrence data. There is a data collection for occurrence data in food, given by the different member states in a standardized way. So we can use this data to identify the exposure. The data come from many different sources, from the industry itself, from the member states, or in some cases, the European Commission, they also have some data on occurrence. And then we have the occurrence, and now we need the consumption data. EFSA has created a very powerful tool, which is the EFSA Comprehensive European Food Consumption Database. I don't know if you have here in Thailand something similar. In this case, we have a database with consumption data from 22 different member states for adults. And for the first time, we have data for children, for 13 member states. Children, sometimes we have toddlers, so we have infants, and we have children. So we have the different groups. Here we have information on normal consumers, so the general population, high consumers, and then we can modulate all our exposure based on this data. Is available on the website, so the summary data sheets are available, publicly available in our website. Then EFSA you can also request some of the raw data, let's say. So then we have the exposure assessment. We can build, and then we are on the third part of our structure. So hazard characterization is done. Exposure assessment, so we have the occurrence data, we have the food consumption data, and we will arrive to make this exposure data for different population groups, as already has been said, on special susceptible populations. High consumers, pregnant women, infants, small children. So all of this is also possible now. We characterize the risk. We can characterize comparing the data, the reference value we identify from a chronic study with exposure. We can do it with the acute data, so only with the 24 hours, because it's all that we have, and we compare it with the dietary exposure. We can calculate what we call the margin of exposure, is when we apply the benchmark dose and we compare with the dietary exposure. So we have different tools on ways to reach a conclusion, even with a very inadequate, in a way, set of data. Some examples of conclusions. So in some cases, we can say that based on the data available, there is no health concern. In some other cases, we say for high consumers, there is an indication of a potential concern for human health. Some other cases, the estimated exposure are well below doses causing toxicity, and therefore there is no effect expected for livestock and fish in the case of a feed contaminant. And then in some other cases, there is no possibility to comment on the risk because there is no data. As I said, we have in the contaminants area, we deal with a very inadequate or limited database. So in all the opinions from the content panel, you will see at the end a table with the different uncertainties, putting all the uncertainties in a small table. Why we are doing this? Because we have to give the information to the Commission, but we are transparent and we say to the Commission, we reached this conclusion, but we have uncertainties on the exposure, we have uncertainties on the type of population, and we give the general picture. Then it's up to the Commission to take the risk management measure according to the information given in the opinion. We give it to the Commission, and then, for example, they have the undesirable substances regulation, and then we work on this. Then, in the area of contaminants, we have also something that is particular, which is the urgent advices. So as Gudrun is saying, if we have a report on a RASF, EFSA should act quickly. We have to look, not, as she said, not in a hysterical way. So we have different urgent advices given in weeks, in days, to be able to give this information in a structured way, in a fast way, to the European Commission. And I think with this one, I put here the website of EFSA, the content panel, and the EFSA journal, just for easy reference of the website. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Patrick, it's your turn for the last presentation. So next and the last presentation is on the labeling of food additives by Patrick de Boisset for today.
Additives are not specifically regulated in terms of their labeling in the new legislation. I will not discuss the current legislation, 2013, but move immediately to the new regulation, which I hope you remember will come into force in December next year, 2014. But the general provisions of the regulation provide that all ingredients have to be listed in the list of